Hello, everyone. My name is Bayor Andrew, and this morning I'm delighted to talk to you about TechShops. And an interesting approach we found very useful in engaging young adults with intellectual disability in exploring design research. So to give a kind of like a background, this research is a collaborative project between Endeavour Foundation and Queensland University of Technology, where I am currently a PhD student. And at Endeavour Foundation is one of the largest disability service providers in the Queensland state of Australia, where our research is based and where our university is. And they offer support services for persons with intellectual disability. And these support services include supporting them to develop skills in broader life skills, such as social participation skills, but also in developing skills for numeracy and then for literacy. So the entire talk I'm going to talk about was focused in this disability service provision center in two centers of this of Endeavour Foundation, and then our participants were young adults with intellectual disability, and had all these challenges of engaging socially and also participating in digital platforms such as social media, issues of etiquette, and issues of engaging to a larger context in these platforms. So this is sort of like background in which this research is situated. So technologies and ICTs in general provide a lot of opportunities and then possibilities for persons with disability. Persons with disability are using devices such as tablets, iPads, to engage in applications such as social media and to support their social participation, and then also to support their entertainment and other connectedness needs. Also recently, virtual reality is providing a lot of opportunity for persons with disability. Virtual reality it was one of the hit words for this conference. It's providing opportunity for skills learning such as cooking, skills learning such as learning skills to take transportation for persons with disability, and so on and so forth. With these potential possibilities that technologies provide for persons with disability, it is important to ensure equity and access and participation in technologies such as the internet and social media broadly. So as researchers, this is where we try to find our own space to support and enrich participation. So it was in this context that we try to explore how young adults with intellectual disability participate in social media. Our aim was to understand the nature of participation, understand characterize participation, but also focus on enriching that participation and in some cases extending that participation for people with disability who were not already participating in social media. We already had a paper worked on the characterizing the nature of participation across the main social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and then and Snapchat, and that was published in Oscar. If you want to take a look, you can. Yeah. So, as a method of engagement for exploring the research, we first tried contextual interviews. Contextual interviews have this strong, powerful potential of blending observations with open-ended questions and contextualizing it within the research focus to elicit understanding. So it was very obvious that this would be a good methodological approach to engage for exploring our research. But interestingly, contextual interviews did not. They didn't work They didn't work for us, and the reasons, there were three main reasons why they failed to work in our context. The first reason was that contextual interviews appeared to be very invasive because we were trying to ask participants to log into their social media accounts and then we can contextualize the discussion whilst they were logged into their discussion. That just appeared to be a bit privacy invading for some of the participants. Besides that, it was quite intimidating. It turned out to be more like a test of competence, asking you what you do and what you are not so able to do in this context. So it wasn't really very suitable for all participants. And then lastly, it was very time consuming, given the varying skills and abilities of our participants. And you would have spent a lot of time in exploring a larger participant base for this kind of research. So for these and other reasons, contextual interviews did not work. So whilst still bubbling in these methodological challenges, we decided as technology students to offer a form of reciprocity in supporting participants to learn about social media, which was one of the technologies that they were very interested in developing skills in. And that gave birth to a second approach that participants called TechShops. So I will talk about TechShops and then how TechShops essentially helped us to navigate these methodological challenges with contextual inquiry that we had initially. So these are just kind of like pictures showing what happens within a tech shop. And it's usually around using technologies, and it's very collaborative and very open, so participants can engage, and some participants can lead the sessions as peer leaders, and then it relaxes this intimidating sort of environment and allows also for exploration of research objectives. So structurally, TechShops is structured around interest of participants, and then these interests are represented in technology use activities to also allow for research investigation, but to support the larger interests of the collaborators that are in the TechShops. And in this case, the collaborators are the researchers, the participants who are young adults, and then with other proxies such as the support staff and families. And each of these collaborators had specific interests that they wanted to engage in TechShops. So for us researchers, we were largely trying to explore how to engage beyond these our contextual challenges. But for young adults, they were interested in developing their skills and participating in social media largely. And also for parents, for their young adults that were already participating in these social media applications to develop skills around etiquette and then safety and privacy issues. So our TechShops were structured. We supported participants to develop these skills with collaborative activities such as learning how to use the voice search for YouTube, which supports participants that do not have the skills to be able to type out their text queries to still be able to search what they want to search, or even enabling your privacy settings on Facebook to ensure that you are safely participating in Facebook. So we collaboratively work with participants in supporting to develop these skills, but also learning and exploring how the nature of participation was in these kind of environments. So what we found was that this allowed us not just only to navigate the engagement challenges that we had, but also it allowed for mutual learning for we the researchers, and then also allowed for engagement and access for us, because initially we had all these challenges of having enough time with participants, but given the value that this approach was given, we actually allowed time to be able to engage with research. So it also allowed a form of familiarization with participants, because now we're engaging with participants more. And we realize that for persons with disability, a key value is to have this sort of engagement even before research, to have personal engagement before research engagement. And these collaborative TechShop activities allowed participants to be able to understand our space in the Disability Center where we were conducting our research. But also there were a few challenges. So we're giving these TechShops across technologies, basically social media, but there were some participants that were interested in developing skills in Snapchat, and when we began the TechShops with Facebook, they became bored. They were not so interested in learning about Facebook, possibly because I already have skills to use Facebook, or that's just not the technology that I want to develop skills in. So that made some participants a bit bored in participating. There were also some participants who already had skills in these technologies, and felt that it was a repetition of things that I already know how to do, but we leveraged that to let them lead others who were still developing those skills in the context of the TechShops. So reflecting on all these things that this second approach enabled us to engage in our research, we found that the collaborative environment that this TechShops approach provided for engaging participants eliminated this intimidation and then this invasiveness that we found with contextual inquiry. It was a more relaxed environment that allowed people to feel that they were learning things that they like, but also allowed us to also, explore our research objectives and research aim. They also offered a form of reciprocity in the sense that the larger research environment, the stakeholders, support staff and families felt that this was contributing value to the participants. And for that matter, they allowed us an entire term where we could do numerous TechShops and then engage largely with participants. But also, they actually allowed us to find out more about the competencies and then the values for persons with disability towards our eventual design artifacts. So for example, we realized that for technologies to support persons with disability, they need to be support in the loop, trying to leverage the participation and pushing it to the next level. We also were able to contextualize other areas for further research. So we identified key bigger issues that needed to be developed further as research focus for our research. So collaboratively, this approach opened up a box of so many things and so many possibilities that are very essential for the sensitive nature of disability research and then also for engagement purposes. So what next? So these were the few things we learned just running TechShops over a couple of 10 weeks. But we're thinking that we may want to try to use this approach to engage in other contexts of design research. So, for example, how will TechShops work if you were using it to co-design, or if you were using it to evaluate a design artifact or a design technology? So we would like to explore TechShops in these also domains and see how that works. And then eventually, from all the understandings that we will drive from all these, we may be able to propose a framework called the TechShops framework that will support persons that are engaged in disability research and design research in general, to leverage for exploring their research. So by way of conclusion, this approach did not just only allow us to navigate our contextual inquiry challenges that we had initially, but essentially, it opened up so many ways of thinking about engaging in research with persons with disability. So, for example, we realized that the value of the TechShops provided a form of reciprocity and also provided a form of mutual learning for we, the researchers, but also for the persons with disability and then the larger research environment. So it also provided a way that allowed us to be able to contextualize our research further. And we will be very happy if other researchers can leverage this and then we exploit together and see what the potential that lies in this approach. Thank you very much for your audience. I will take your questions now.
So we're taking questions.
Hi, I'm Vinoba from the BBC. You have some very interesting ideas here. So I have some nephews and nieces, and every time they want to engage with social media, I'm the aunt that people come to because I work in tech, and therefore I should know how to tell them about how to be safe on the internet, how to be aware of vulnerabilities that you might face. Now, you're working with a set of folks who want to get access and skills to social media platforms, but what sort of problems have you faced, or issues, challenges that you faced, and how do you deal with it in trying to teach them skills that are a little bit more on the sort of higher level, where you know how to be safe on the internet, how to be aware that not everything on they read is real and how to be, just anything that a general child should know and would be taught at home, I suppose. How do you deal with that in TechShops? You've got relationships and built, so one assumes that trust level is there so that you would be the right place for people to learn about this.
Okay, so if I try to summarize that, I think you're asking what were some of the challenges we encountered in trying to develop these skills in the TechShop sessions. Is that right?
Not just functional skills, but also the overall engagement skills that you might have with social media.
Oh, well, yeah. So, the challenges that we found that I've just talked about were some of the challenges we had. But, you also had sometimes the TechShops were structured that we will have 8 participants so that we could be able to effectively support them. But you end up having 16 participants because everybody is interested and wants to be part of it. So, and that affects the, the amount of support you can give across participants. But it was also very difficult to, in a way, discuss some of the issues of netiquette. So what we did was to create scenarios. So you have this friendship request from this person, and you don't know the person. What do you do? So we have this discussion, and then what you should do, it becomes clear to everybody. And this discussion is generated essentially by other participants who probably have developed these skills and know how to handle these things. So this was how we blended these scenarios and then practical use on the platform to support them to develop these skills that were really skills that they needed.
Good morning. I'm Alexandra Zanidou from Open Lab. Thank you for your interesting information. I would like to ask, you mentioned an earlier engagement with the people. Can you please elaborate a bit more, give us a bit more information about that? How you achieved that, this engagement before you begin the research?
Sorry, I can't hear the question properly, please. Can you?
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Alex, now we'd like more details about the engagement with the group that you did before conducting the tech shop. That's right.
Oh, okay. So I think partially the engagement was not very rich because we're very new in the research environment. And I personally think that probably that was one of the reasons why contextual inquiries probably failed woefully, because participants did not know us very well. And for some of them, they did not know exactly what our role in the environment was, even though it was explained several times in group meetings, what we're doing, and so on and so forth. So the engagement at that level was really not very good. So we tried to speak to some participants during lunch times, and they virtually just ignored us. But when we started TechShops, the engagement became richer, and participants freely spoke to us about the questions we initially were asking and having no answers. So it was a series of transitions. And I think the transition got, quickened and have this element of reciprocity when this second approach of TechShops came in. And that's what makes this approach very interesting, in that it enriches the engagement quicker, and then it also allows for support in very valuable ways to the larger research environment stakeholders. Yeah.
Hi, Andy. That was a great presentation. I wanted to ask a question, kind of following on from yours, about online privacy. So you're working with a vulnerable group of people. So I'm wondering, was it explicit, you mentioned the scenarios, but was there explicit training that you developed? And then kind of extending from that, were there caregivers involved, and what were their perceptions on the whole training experience?
Okay. We didn't have really a very structured as in like A, B, C, D activities for ensuring issues like netiquette or online privacy. They were just the general issues that you will encounter in your everyday use of social media applications. So, we discuss issues such as when, for example, if people ask you for information that are very personal online, don't give them out. If somebody is bullying you or saying things that you don't want, speak to the next support staff. But in the tech shops itself, there was always a support staff in participating in the tech shops. And the interesting thing in that was that our tech shops did not run for the entire week. They ran for only one day in the week. And this support staff relayed what we did in the tech shops with other participants that came to the center in previous days. So it wasn't only a kind of like a skill support for only the participants, but also the support staff found value in this and really wanted to make everybody in the environment learn from this and then develop skills around that. So, as far as support staff and then a larger disability environment was concerned, there was that level of engagement.